Hello everyone, my name is Jaco van Gas and I am a two-time Paralympic champion. I'm delighted to welcome you to this Paralympic series special of the Beyond Disability podcast, where we will be talking all about the exciting upcoming games and you will hear from some incredible athletes. So make sure that you click the follow button to never miss an episode, and I hope you enjoy.
Hello everyone, and welcome to you both to the Paralympic Special of the Beyond Disabilities podcast. We've got a swim, cycle and run podcast special as we build up to the Road to Paris Games. I feel like I'm in kind of para-triathlon royalty here with Michael Taylor and Hannah Moore are with us, joining us today. Welcome to you both.
Hello. Hey Tory, thanks for having us.
Hi Hannah, how are you?
All good here, thank you. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, yeah, I do feel kind of honoured to be chatting to you both, really. I'm a prosthetist, as you guys know, in our Dorset Orthopaedic clinic down in the brand new Southern clinic, actually, down in Ringwood. And Hannah, I suppose I'll give a brief introduction to some of your history in para sport, including being 2 times world champion, European champion, and a national champion in para triathlon. But I'll let you dive into the details of all of that. And Michael as well, competing in Tokyo 2022, and then since then you've had a huge amount of success, winning the national champs in 2021, and then both of you hopefully preparing for this year's games in Paris. So yeah, I was gonna kind of start with you, Hannah. Really, I read a brief bit on your bio on the triathlon website, to say that at the start of your rehab, one of your goals was to compete in para sport and para triathlon. I've heard some optimistic and also pessimistic goals of patients in the past, but that really is that's a big goal to start off with.
Yeah, I think for me, because my amputation was elective, I kind of had a period before that where I wanted to kind of set myself some goals to do after the amputation to kind of keep me motivated and give me things to work towards, I guess. And to be honest, it didn't start, paratriathlon was not number 1 on the list, but yes, obviously started with things like learning to walk again, because I'd been unable to walk for kind of 2 years before my amputation. And then to do a triathlon was another one, because during my time up before my amputation, I did some wheelchair racing, and through that I'd met people that had done sort of para-tri, and it kind of blew my mind a bit, because I never really considered it as like a para sport, I guess. But growing up where I did in a little village in Dorset, like you didn't really see young people with disabilities who did sport, I guess. So I wasn't really aware of the different para sports that were kind of out there. And at the time I wasn't able to swim because I had open wounds in my foot. So it was kind of like one of those things, I was like, oh, well, once I've had my amputation and I can walk and do all this stuff, maybe I'll give it a go. So I did my first triathlon 10 months after having my amputation, and then just loved it. And it kind of just grew from there, I guess, for me.
Oh, fantastic. So triathlon wasn't a sport you were kind of interested in beforehand, and what disciplines of it were you interested in? Were you running before, cycling before, or did it all just really come into play when you had the amputation?
I think for me, like I mean, I did karate for 10 years when I was a kid. So I have a black belt in karate, but I always hated running. Running was literally the thing. I always had a fake sick note for reasons I couldn't do cross country at school, because I just hated it, which is kind of ironic when I look back on it now. But I think it just sort of appealed to me, like the variety of it, I guess, and doing the wheelchair racing, obviously before having my amputation, and then I was like, oh wait, actually I do need to run once I've had my amputation. So that's always the bit that I've kind of struggled with, but particularly the swimming and the cycling is what I enjoy the most about it, and just the variety that triathlon brings, I guess. It means like every day is different, and just that variety, which I find really exciting, I guess.
Fantastic. So I suppose you mentioned there that you had an elective amputation. do you want to tell, I suppose, the listeners a little bit about your amputation level and your journey, I suppose, to deciding to have that elective amputation?
Yeah, so in 2012, I had a minor operation to remove an ingrown toenail in my foot, which kind of caused a condition called CRPS, which is complex regional pain syndrome. For sort of 2 years, I obviously had pain and wasn't able to sort of use my foot, but I could still kind of walk a bit on it. And then after sort of about 2 years, I started to get really bad ulcers in my foot, which kept getting infected. And I had about 52 operations, I think, in the course of sort of 2 years to try and skin graft it and fix it and obviously repair the damage, but nothing was really working. And I suppose I kind of got to the point where I was like, well, if this hasn't worked like 50 times, then I was sort of 18 at the time. I was like, I can't just keep doing this in the hope something might work, because by that point, like the kind of condition my foot was in, I wouldn't have been able to walk on my leg anyway. So I elected to have my amputation in 2016, and my amputation is just below my knee. So yeah.
Fantastic. And Michael, you were the CMU elected to have an amputation. Do you want to, I suppose, I'll introduce you to the podcast, and really, do you want to tell us a little bit about how you lost your left leg below the knee and how you kind of get introduced to sport and competing in para triathlon?
Yeah, so I actually developed a joint infection in my ankle, and it just kept getting worse and worse. I had like multiple operations, just trying to get on top of it, and multiple rounds of antibiotics, but it just kept getting worse and spread into the bones of my foot and my ankle, and yeah, and destroyed, basically just destroyed my ankle. So after like probably a year of operations and antibiotics and the risk of the infection getting worse, yeah, I elected to have the amputation so I could actually finally get rid of the infection and actually move on a little bit and not be stuck with endless rounds of surgeries and potentially leg lengthening operations and etc. So yeah, so that was back in 2016, and then that was also happened to be the year that the Paralympics was on the TV. So that was in the May of 2016, and then obviously in the summer the late summer of that year was Paralympics and the Olympics. So I watched like the Brownies, I watched like Lauren Steadman and Andy Lewis racing, and just yeah, triathlon just seemed like something I wanted to do, because I was always quite sporty. I used to play a lot of rugby, I swam a lot, a sport called surf life saving, and like I cycled and stuff like that, but not to like a high level. So yeah, so triathlon just seemed like a good challenge. It looked pretty fun. You got to go to cool places, and I was actually due to start uni that September in Cardiff, and they had a triathlon centre. So I knew it was a possibility. And then also, whilst like just recovering, I'd been doing a lot of Googling, and I saw there was lots of there was a initiative that British Triathlon put on called Try for Tokyo, and that was on maybe in like maybe a bit later that year. So I went along to that, had a go. I could swim pretty well. I could cycle. I couldn't really run because I didn't have a running blade, but I ran on my like day leg. And then through that, I got linked up with the triathlon centre in Cardiff, and then it kind of escalated from there, really.
Oh, fantastic! I suppose both of you going through that elective amputation route, it's a big decision that I suppose a lot of other amputees kind of go through. So I suppose, was there a big decision when it came? Was it a big decision? Did you have a lot of information before you went into amputation, and has the outcome been the same as what you maybe expected beforehand?
I think for me personally, everyone always says, oh, it must have been such a big decision, but I think after sort of kind of the 4 years of like suffering and trying to fix my leg and nothing really happening, for me it just became quite an obvious thing that to kind of stand any chance of kind of moving on and getting past this, like it was really the only option available that was going to give me some sort of almost just like a fresh start, I guess, in terms of like, as kind of Michael said before, like just getting rid of the infections was like a big thing, because that just constantly led me to being in hospital all the time and things like that. And yeah, obviously I had a lot of with CRPS, they always say like it could come back in your stump and things like this. So I had a lot of like pre-amputation like consultations and stuff with different people about that and like the potential risk of that and things like that. But ultimately, like for me, it just became quite an obvious thing, like this was the right thing to do, and 100% like it was the best decision I ever made, because I can now do so much more that I was just not able to do whilst my leg was in that kind of condition beforehand. So yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic to hear. Was that similar for you, Michael? Was it a big decision, and were you aware that you would be able to compete at such a high level with an amputation? You know, did you know that going in? Or have you kind of surprised yourself with the level of activity you've been able to achieve?
Yeah, it was a massive decision. I think it like took me quite a while to come to terms with the fact that my ankle was pretty ruined and it wasn't going to recover. Like I think I was in pretty much for the first 6 or 7 months, I was in quite a lot of denial and I thought it could get better and it was going to heal. But then once I realized the extent of the damage to my foot and realized like realistically I'm never going to have a normal foot, I'm never going to be able to walk on my foot again. And there was still the risk of the infection spreading and it getting worse. So yeah, I only had really a couple of options. I had another option to have more operations, remove more of the bone, and then hopefully later down the line, have some leg lengthening operations to try and make my foot normal and have a fused ankle. But like I knew realistically that might not even sort the issue. And then even if it did work and it was successful, best case scenario, I'd be able to walk, but I'd have a limp. It'd probably be quite uncomfortable. I wouldn't be able to run. I'd be quite limited in my mobility. So I was looking at other options, and I spoke to a few people who'd been in a similar situation. I spoke to a guy that was blown up in Afghanistan or somewhere, and he'd had a similar thing of years of multiple operations, and had finally had decided to go for an elective amputation, and he hadn't looked back. And although it's tough, obviously it's tough. Like it's not for everyone. It can be quite restrictive sometimes with a prosthetic. Like you can't wear it all the time. There are limits, but on good days I can run again and I can do all these things that I wouldn't have been able to do. So it was a big decision, but ultimately for me it felt it was the best way I could move on, get rid of the infection, and actually get back to doing sport and get back to life, and not have my life on hold for multiple years and not be in pain and discomfort. So yeah, it was huge, and the ups and downs, but obviously for me it was the right decision, I think.
Oh no, I'm delighted to hear that. And as a prosthetist, I tend to always think slightly pro prosthetics and pro that side. So and it doesn't work for everybody, but I'm delighted to hear that you both have been able to return to really high levels of activity. So and on that, we've got you've both been competing throughout this year and some races last year. How's training been going? We've got a build up to Sunday the 1st, really, Sunday the 1st of September in Paris, and hoping that everything goes well for that. But how's the last kind of year been training, competing? What sort of races have you done, and has the journey been what you expected? Probably hear from you first, Hannah.
Yeah, I think for me it has been pretty tough, to be honest with you. Several years through, like from 2020, of kind of injury and illness led to me sort of losing my funding and support from British Triathlon. So then last year was really hard to try and then get back to competing internationally, which I did and was successful at different races last year. And I think 4 or 5 podiums, which was really great. And then towards the end of last year, got my funding and support back, which was great, to be honest. It was really hard to kind of get through that period when I was sort of doubting myself and being a bit like, well, like, is this actually what I want to do? And like, am I going to make it back to that really high level? Because I've been knocked back like with injury and illness and stuff. Yeah, since then it's been great. Like, and I've not really looked back. I think last year getting back to competing and just consistent training again was really, really important, and just carried that through sort of all of the last winter just gone, and then into sort of the beginning of the season this year, which has started off pretty well for me. So yeah, it's just been about getting the consistent training in, I think, and just keeping going with it all. But yeah, it's definitely looking the right direction now, which is nice after a few years of kind of struggling with different things and trying to get over that. Yeah.
Absolutely, and most recently, your win in the Para event recently. So that's a great kind of place to work from and to go from there. Have you got any other races coming up in the near future?
Yeah, that was really great, and it was a really good race. I really enjoyed that one. But yeah, I think we're both actually racing at World Series race in Swansea in a couple of weeks' time. So that'll be really good to have a home sort of World Series race in our country. Limits the travel and things as well, which is always nice. But then yeah, and then our sort of the qualification window closes sort of the week after that. So yeah, it's a kind of last opportunity to get some good points, hopefully before that qualification window closes.
Well, good luck with that race, and I'll hopefully see you in Swansea. And Michael, how's your kind of last year of training been? You've had a couple of really good positions, and you're racing in Swansea as well, I believe.
Yeah. So I've actually had a really good year. So I've gone full time just training since June last year, so literally a whole year. And it's been awesome. I've been able to go away over the winter, escape the cold weather and cycle in nice warm weather and open air pools. And then I've literally from probably since I started racing really early because I had limited racing opportunities last year. And so I started off with a race in Australia actually, and that was a World Series, and I got the win, which put me back on track for some good Paris qualification points. And then basically since then, I've been away pretty much every month doing a race in different parts of the world. So I've been to Australia, did a race in Turkey, and then I was in Japan for a race, and then most recently did a race in Uzbekistan. And yeah, from them they've gone much better than I expected. Like I've got 3 wins out of them and then 1 sixth. So yeah, so with the qualification period almost up, yeah, with Swansea coming up, it will hopefully just be a good chance to hopefully cement my position and hopefully cement a spot on the Paralympic team for this September. But yeah, overall it's been a great year and exciting to see what the next few months holds, really.
That's like those locations that you're flying in. I feel like must feel like a movie star. Is it difficult to kind of do you enjoy the traveling element, both of you, or does it is it a difficult thing traveling around? Does it tire you out before events, or is it, I suppose, part of the flair that makes part of the appeal?
I think Michael say the opposite to me here, but I think I do enjoy it. I do go like going to different places, but sometimes it can be quite stressful, I guess, because some places just work very differently to how I guess we're used to working. And obviously traveling with so much kit and stuff for triathlon, like we all have multiple prosthetics, bikes. I travel with my wheelchair as well. Like when we're traveling as a team, we have so much equipment and things, so that can be kind of a lot sometimes as well. But generally, it is really cool to go to all these different places and get to see different parts of the world that we wouldn't normally get, or I wouldn't normally get to go and see. So yeah.
Oh, that's great. So different, I suppose looking into really the event itself, we've got para triathlon. Many of our listeners will be aware of kind of Olympic triathlon distances or what's involved, but how's that different in para triathlon? How does it work, with using different prosthetic legs in transitions and I suppose what does each discipline look like for you guys in a race?
Yeah, so similar to it's the same 3 disciplines as Olympic triathlon, but we do it over a sprint distance, which is a 750-meter swim, a 20-kilometer bike ride, and then a 5K run. And then it's kind of divided into 3 sort of main categories, which have subcategories in them. So there's a standing category, which would be me and Hannah. So which goes from PTS 5, which is least impaired, down to PTS 2, which is most impaired. So PTS 5 would be like missing a hand or something similar, and then PTS 4 is below knee amputation or above elbow amputation or something similar. PTS 3 is usually like cerebral palsy, and then PTS 2 is above knee. And then there's wheelchair classes. So I think there's like 2 classes. There's one with no movement below the waist. And then there's one where they have some limited movement below the waist, but still use a wheelchair.
So the PTS, Michael, that stands for para triathlon standing. And then we've got categories from 2 to 5 in that number. And that's really the level of severity, with two being the most severe and 5 being the least severe level of impairment. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So me and Hannah would be PTS 4. So we both have below knee amputations. So yeah, most people in our class would have that or an above elbow or something similar.
Okay. And I noticed with those classifications, I think that's one of the things, viewers of the games
find a bit of a minefield and kind of struggle to understand. But I noticed that in the para triathlon event on Sunday the 1st, PTS2 to PTS5 are all seem to be starting in the same race time. Is that right? And how do you work around that and know who you're competing against?
I think we're all starting around the same time, but we're not starting exactly. So we may be on the course at the same time, but we'll have different start times within that period.
Okay, so the course kind of opens and closes for each different category.
Yeah, usually there's like a 10 or 20-minute gap between, so each one.
Often it's kind of set off in waves so that there is like enough of a gap. And I think like a lot of the time, like you kind of just know who, like you kind of know who else you're competing against. So a lot of the time it's sort of okay to try and work out.
I think if you're watching it as like a lay person, can be quite confusing.
Yeah,
like, you literally have no idea who's racing who. You see random people coming past, people pulling in, going onto the run, and you're not really sure. But that's half the fun of it, I think.
Yeah, and whereas I suppose you guys have been competing against some of these other athletes, you know, in the run up to the event, so you get to know the names and faces of the people you're competing with. So 750-meter swim, 20k bike, and a 5k run. Do you have best and worst sections of that, favorites within that? Michael, what about you, Hannah? You can start with that one. You weren't a runner before, but has that now become a love of yours, or are you still strongest in the other sections?
I'd say it's a love-hate relationship we have with running, to be honest. Yeah, I think that probably would be my weakest discipline. I definitely prefer the swim bike, and then sort of I generally think by the time I get off the bike, the race is nearly over, so I might as well just sort of run to finish the race. But I'm getting there. It's a work in progress. I think I've learned sort of over the years that it's one of the things you just can't rush, because every time I tried to rush sort of progressing the run on a lot, generally just get injured and things like that. So yeah, patience is a virtue, I think, with running, especially as an amputee, or that's what I've found anyway.
And for you, Michael, do you have a favorite discipline or one that you tend to rely on to get you ahead, or a weak discipline, or how is it for you?
Well, I've always been a swimmer, so swimming I really enjoy, and open water swimming particularly I really enjoy. So I tend to have quite a strong swim and near the front of the race. And my bike, I'm more probably average field. I'm okay. I kind of a bit inconsistent. Sometimes I have a good race, sometimes not so good. And then the run I'm okay on. It's probably not. I really enjoy running, but it's just not. I'm not the most natural runner, but getting a lot quicker. But it's just there's some ridiculously quick runners in my field. So which is really good, because it means you pushes you to go a bit harder and faster than you might otherwise go. So yeah, so I think it's just, as Hannah said before, like the mixture of having all three disciplines is what I really enjoy and what really makes triathlon fun, I think.
Yeah, and the transition stage between that is obviously very different, you know, with you guys swapping prosthetics or setups on different equipment. I see a lot of athletes training and swimming, and athletes training and cycling and running, but I very rarely see anyone, you know, I'm never at my local pool and see people get out really quickly and and get into their cycling gear and sprint out of that. So where does the transition practice come in?
You obviously don't see what goes on in Loughborough then, because that happens a lot.
I'm at the wrong swimming pools there.
At the wrong swimming pool, yeah.
I'm at the spa section and you guys are at the
For me personally, like, it's definitely something that I practice. I think there's one thing sort of practicing it like just when you're relaxed and calm, but I think I generally practice transitions quite a lot sort of after a hard session, so that you're kind of trying to do it when your heart rate's high and maybe your hands are a bit like shaky, so that it kind of is more comparable to how you would be doing the transitions during the race as well. So yeah, it's definitely something that I practice and try to practice more sort of when I get into the race season, because yeah, it's just obviously really, I think for me as well, like racing in my category, it's not only amputees. Like obviously there are people with like neurological impairments and stuff as well. So when they're not sort of stopping to change prosthetics or things like that, they obviously have different challenges. It just means that I need to try and make the transitions as smooth as possible, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And how about for you, Michael?
Yeah, likewise. So I train in one of the triathlon centres in Bath, and there's a cycle circuit called Odd Down. So yeah, as Hannah said, in like race season, we often go down there and do like a run to bike session, which is quite good because it's like a closed circuit, so you can just leave your bike up and run around the loop, and then with other people as well, it's quite nice. And after doing a bit of a session, you're obviously a bit tired. But I also do find it's always so much harder, or there's never quite the same as when you're actually racing. So I do think I get better at it throughout race season, which is why I quite like to race a bit early, get some early races in, and I feel like each race I get slightly improve slightly better and get a bit more like you sort of, after a while, I think you just get into a good routine and get to know exactly without having to think about it too much. So yeah, it's quite hard to replicate that in training.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose, when you're training, it's hard to save 10 seconds on a bike or on a swim, but if you can easily cut out 10 seconds of your transition time by, getting your goggles off or getting your prosthetic on quickly, then that's a real benefit to the race. So, on those prosthetics, what do you guys use when you're racing? Do you I know, Michael, we've discussed this a little bit, trying to decide between do you have a running prosthetic and a separate cycling prosthetic? Do you do it all in one? Hannah, how do you balance that? Do you cycle and run on the one prosthetic, or do you swap in between that?
I think for me, it's something that we worked on really hard, just trying to work out like actually what works best. And I've tried a few different things. For me personally, the thing we've tried to we've created a bit of a new situation up in Burton, which is the clinic that I go to, whereby I can run and bike sort of in the same leg. Obviously not do the run section, but sort of run through transition and bike in the same leg, and then obviously swap and put my running blade on for the actual run in the triathlon. But yeah, it's something that we've worked really hard to develop over the last sort of year or so. Because yeah, just trying to find the balance between what's best on the bike versus transitions and all of that. And it is just a lot to think about. And I think with that, even when you go to sort of an international race, you just see so many different people do it, all with sort of similar amputations, doing so many different things, just because what works for one person just doesn't work for everybody. So yeah, it's quite interesting. But yeah, we've worked really hard to develop this new sort of triathlon leg, which it's been doing really well for me, to be fair. So yeah, it's quite exciting.
It's brilliant. Glad to hear it. So I suppose coming up to, I've been having a look at the course map of the Paris route, and as a big cycling fan myself, I've seen that the course includes laps of the Champs-Élysées, the famous Tour de France sprint finish. That looks like the most epic racing laps of a life. Are you kind of excited about the course?
Yeah, obviously, if I get selected, it'll be incredible because we get to race along the historic the riverfront through the middle of the city. The course is right in the middle of the city, and we get to go on the cobbled sections and racing through like past all the historic buildings. And our transition is actually on like a famous bridge, and the background is some like amazing old French architecture. So I think it's going to be the most picturesque course I've ever raced on if I do get to go. But yeah, so I think that's a big highlight. I think the city itself, like the location makes it such a special event. Yeah, so very excited. And I guess I assume Hannah.
Yeah, I think I'd second that. Like, I was lucky enough to go to the test event last year, although I didn't actually get to start at the race. I went and did all the course recce's and things like that, which was just incredible. And I think when we were there sort of riding up the Champs-Élysées, and you're kind of just like, wow, this is actually going to be where we're potentially racing, obviously if we get selected. And yeah, it was just crazy. And I think it probably is the coolest location that I will ever do a triathlon, to be honest with you, because it's just right in the city centre. Absolutely, I think it'd be so cool. But yeah,
of course, it's just steeped in history, and it sounds like Paris will be opening up the Seine for swimming as well, which I suppose brings its challenges in itself. I don't know if you've seen on Netflix a film's released called Under Paris, about a shark that's got escaped into the Seine River. If you've seen the trailer for that, I don't know if it's if that's putting you off or if it's interesting timing.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's all just French trying to get in our heads, trying to get the psychological games in, throw us off our game. Yeah, so I think that's what it is. I think they've seen how we're swimming and they're like getting a bit scared. So they're like, "Oh, how can we slow them down?"
Yeah, it's dirty tactics.
Yeah,
But,
classic. But yeah, and yeah, but it'd be so good. I think especially in my race, I'm not sure of Hannah's, but there's two really good French guys. So I think the level of support from the French crowd will be very good. So I think it would be a very well supported race.
I think it will be, because obviously you don't necessarily need a ticket to come and see the triathlon, because people can just come and spectate on the course. So I think hopefully there'll be loads of people that come out to support the event.
Fantastic. So cobbles are involved. Do you know if it's going to be a hilly race? And I suppose with different types of terrain, and do you find that you guys individually are suited to different courses, and do you look out for that? Do you excel in hilly courses, technical courses, and does that change what your race calendar looks like, where you think you're going to perform well?
I think everyone has their favourites, don't they? I mean, I definitely do. I don't know that it necessarily influences what I always do, because I think it is good to get experience on a variety of different courses, regardless of what your favourites are. But sometimes when you look at sort of the course maps for different places and you think, oh yeah, like that'll suit me really well, it always just, for me, it just gives me like a little extra. I'm like, oh, this is exciting. But I don't think it necessarily influences what I would do, just because, yeah, we need to kind of experience different things as well.
Yeah, I think I'd probably be better on flatter courses and where it's like less hot. I don't do so well in like hot, humid conditions. So yeah, I prefer a nice chill, cold race with nice flat course and maybe a few corners, just so you can have a little bit of let off the power. But yeah,
a bit of practice required in the cobbles, maybe in the coming weeks.
Exactly. Well, luckily where I live in Bristol, there's quite a few cobbled streets, so I've been out and about on my race bike, just going over them, and everyone's probably watching me like, what the hell is that guy doing? But
maybe I need to come to Bristol.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
We get a full training session there, which would be great.
Yeah. For those who don't know, me and Tory often do a few training sessions together. Not only is he my prosthetist, he's also a great training partner.
Yeah, I think training partner just means that I make Michael cycle in front of me, Hannah, and I shelter from the rain, or shelter from the wind and the drag, and then I buy the cakes maybe to pay, to make up for it, but no, that's yeah. But no, I have a good excuse that Michael needs his training, so no, that's been good. So yeah, I suppose coming into this time, balancing training and everything else that goes on in life, are you both do you work outside? Are you studying? Or has training taken over your life in the last couple of months?
Yeah, so yeah, for the last year I've taken the year off, but yeah, which has been unreal, because I was training and studying alongside it, and it was definitely possible, but I just found it quite hard work, and I just felt like I was a bit half-hearted in both, and I wasn't really been able to do my best in either of them. So I thought it's better just to have a year off, enjoy it, give it my all, see how far I can get with it, and then see how I go. So yeah, so as I said before, I've had a great year. It's given me the opportunity to just the freedom to get out and train in different countries, and also just time to recover and not being on my feet all day, which I think is really important, particularly with prosthetics. You sometimes need a bit of time off your feet. Well, but I will be going back to studying after Paralympics. So yeah, exciting times. It's nice to have something lined up, I guess.
Yeah. And Hannah, what about you? How do you, I suppose rest is important as training and some of these things. So are you doing anything outside of training that keeps you occupied and takes your mind off things?
Yeah, so I've just recently I mean, last month, finished my degree at Loughborough Uni. So I just submitted my dissertation for that, which is amazing that it's finally done.
Fantastic. Well done.
So
Well
yeah,
done.
I've been doing that. I have been working part-time within the NHS, and but I have to say recently I've been taking more time just to, yeah, as Michael said, like recovery and kind of just focus a bit more on training and just doing some things that I actually enjoy myself, like outside of training. So I like doing like a lot of crafting and cooking and things like that, and taking my dog out for nice walks and stuff. So it's just having nice to have a bit more time to do things like that, I guess, as well, which just takes my mind off kind of the training, which I think is really important to have that balance as well, because it can become very like all consuming, I guess, and I don't think that's always necessarily completely healthy. So I think, yeah, having those kind of distractions that are just a bit more chilled out, relaxing, less pressurized is really like nice to have the time to do that as well.
Very important. So yeah, so you both are names that we're all going to be looking out for in para sport over the next couple of years. Is there any other para GB athletes that are ones to watch that you think?
Yeah, I'd say so there's a new guy in para triathlon he's just come across from cycling called Henry Durand, and he's a PTS free. So but he's quality. He's very strong on the bike, very strong runner, and his swimming's coming on a long way. So I think he'd be a good person to watch.
Yeah, and I
Okay.
think within the women's PTS 5 category, obviously we've got both Claire Cashmore and Lauren Steadman, so that's always a good battle to watch out for within the para triathlon. So yeah, I think it'll be quite good to see them going head to head in Paris, hopefully. And there's a few other strong girls in their category, so I think that will be a really exciting race to watch.
And yeah, it sounds like although it's a kind of an individual when you're competing, it sounds like you've got a kind of a good squad between you and you travel together, and it makes it makes it have that team feel about what would otherwise seem like quite a solo individual sport. You guys both got into, as I suppose we started with, you both got involved in para sport through kind of going to come try it sessions and just getting involved. Do you have any advice for, potentially younger listeners who are interested in getting involved in para sport, who may, recently have had an amputation or just after watching the games might be a bit inspired by you?
I think just go and try it would be my advice, because ultimately you don't really know what you like, don't like, what suits you until you've actually given it a go. So for me, I'd just say try as many different things as possible. And yeah, I just found something that I really enjoy doing, and turns out I'm quite good at it, I guess. So yeah, I think just try as many things as possible, and be open to new experiences of doing different sports, and just different ways of doing things, I guess.
Yeah, and finding the sport that fits for you and fits into your lifestyle and abilities. And what about you, Michael? You were at Cardiff Cardiff Uni when you started and went to the come try it sessions. Would you have any kind of advice for people
Yeah,
listening who might be
likewise,
interested?
similar to Hannah, it just opened my eyes to the opportunities that are available in para sports. There's so many different sports to try. There's things to suit different people, and I've been overwhelmed by the amount of support from federations and universities, and everyone's so keen to see people get back into sport. And I just think it's such a nice thing for your mental health, your physical health, and also just from my recovery after injury. It was just so important to get strong again and have that sort of what I really missed was that sort of camaraderie, and that, like, as you said, triathlon's an individual sport, but as individual sports go, you can swim with people, you can ride with people, you can run with people. It's quite social, and you do develop quite a good strong team bonds. And yeah, I think it's just go and try things out. Lots of opportunities available and lots of open days. There's often some in Bath, I've noticed. Just like keep an eye out on. I think just Google, have a look up and see what you fancy. And if you wanted to reach out to me or Hannah, I'm sure we'd both be happy to point you in the right direction. But yeah, don't be afraid to get back into it. And even just, it doesn't have to be to a high level. You can just do it for fun. But yeah, I think it's very important to sport as part of your life.
Absolutely, and from I suppose from my point of view, as just if people want to get involved in sport as a prosthetist, working in this field, it's really my biggest joy is working with people who enjoy sport. So, just asking clinicians, I think as well, and asking prosthetists and whoever your clinician is for whatever it is, I'm sure they'd be delighted to help point you in the right direction of getting involved in different things. So, well, thank you both very kind of much for having a chat with me today. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I kind of look forward to seeing you both in hopefully Swansea first, and then even more hopefully in Paris.